Hi friends and welcome. My name is Donato Fatuesi. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the land in which we stand on today are the traditional lands of the Coast Salish and Duwamish tribes. And this is Kurry Talks. To make carbs. Now, if this is your first time here in our Kurry Talks space, Kurry Talks is a place in which we bring the medicinal properties of healing that Kurry has helped to heal our many Pacific Island communities and invite folks within our community to share their stories about how they've been impacted by COVID-19. And so today we have a very special guest who is none other than Chrystahl Fiso Carrington. Hi, Chrystahl.
Hi, Natal.
How are you?
I'm doing good. And yourself? Hi, everyone.
I am fine as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to be part of our holiday episode of Kurry Talks.
I'm excited. Thank you for having me, everyone.
Yes. Now, Chrystahl, when we first learned about the pandemic, what were some of the emotions that you went through?
I would probably say it would probably be like a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. Not for myself throughout the pandemic time, but it's mostly for my mom, because my mom she's diabetic, yeah? She's actually, like, I worry for her. Because the first thing that was coming on was majority of the older people that was, getting affected by it. So the first thing that came to my mind was my mom. I did everything I can to,
to help make sure that
yes,
she's safe.
That she's safe and stuff like that. It's a very scary feeling to go through it. So that's what I was going through at the time. The first person that came to my mind was my mom.
Absolutely, and that's a very real fear, especially that you're the caretaker for your parents, right?
Yes.
And so when that news was coming out, and as your parents' caretaker, who was also needing to work and, the risk of like bringing COVID-19 home, what was that like for you?
Actually, before COVID-19 first came out and stuff like that, I kind of got laid off by the COVID-19 thing. So I wasn't really going anywhere because we went into shutdown immediately.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to go anywhere, but I was home. I was able to be around them and to protect them from everything that's going on.
Many people lost their jobs this year, you included. And not knowing how we might be able to take care of not just ourselves, but for you, it was your parents you're caretaker for. How did you cope with that stress?
It was a lot of stress to cope with during the time and stuff like that, especially trying to provide to as well within my parents. How I cope with it is I kind of went around and looked for a job that doesn't affiliate with too much people or away from them. So that's why I can take away from them, because on the side, I hustle on the side. But that's, with the pandemic going on, we wouldn't want to do that. So I applied for the fishing company. So that took me away from them for like a whole month or two.
Wow.
So that's how I was able to cope, because I still search and just remain calm throughout the time, because if I panic, my parents are going to panic. So I didn't want to show no sign of panic or any type of sad emotions in front of them. So that's how I cope with it.
So that must have been really hard, having to leave your parents to take a job far away during a pandemic and also taking care of them. What were some of the feelings or emotions around that?
It was
And
oh,
sorry,
okay, go ahead.
the other thing I'm really interested to touch on too is like going so far away from home. Were there any risks that your parents might be exposed to COVID while you're away, and how might you be able to manage still being able to care for them, by being so far from home?
Of course, we will all have that fear, no matter where we go or no matter how careful we are trying to be with our parents and stuff like that, just especially with this COVID-19 thing. But I kind of, before I left, I set up their handy van and stuff like that for dialysis and stuff like that. So that's why they only come from the house to dialysis and back home.
Wow.
So before I left, we already did shopping and stuff like that. It was already there.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom and dad, like they're able to take care of each other, move around the house, stuff like that. But leaving the house, they wouldn't do it. So
Yeah.
they would only go by handy van, and handy van only works with people like essential kind of rides
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So I was more confident that they'll be okay at that
Wow.
time.
And so how has that experience been so far? I mean, you're back from Alaska now. What's happened since?
When I got back from Alaska, I went back home. Mom and dad are still okay until a month, like probably in August, I fell into and I tested positive with COVID
Wow.
in the month of August. It's this is probably my first time sharing it publicly,
Mm-hmm.
but hopefully it will help someone. I was so busy focusing on my parents that I didn't know I'll catch it.
Yeah.
But I went, so I immediately went to the ER because I had my whole body was getting hot and stuff like that, and I was starting to feel a headache. I was getting weak.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have all the symptoms because as soon as I felt the symptoms today, I knew I had to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
When I got to the hospital, to the emergency room, I got tested and it came back positive.
Mm-hmm.
I came back home, packed my stuff. My parents like, "What are you doing?" Then I told them that they would have to stay in their room. I had to stay in my room and waited for my ride to go to the hotel to quarantine and stuff like that throughout the whole time I was there. And I think God is good because a lot of things happened, especially with that with me, and it didn't affect my parents at the time. Like I really left right on time. So don't wait around. Don't wait around. Don't try to hang out and try to think that you can do it yourself because it's real, and you really gotta get out there and get help when it comes to stuff like that.
Well, Chrystahl, thank you so much for sharing that very personal story. The weight and the impact that has on us, especially with the risks of infecting our loved ones, are so real. And this holiday season, many of us are being forced to ask those questions. And some of us are not even considering it, right? So what kind of advice would you give to our viewers who are thinking about gathering during this holiday season when still being faced with the possible risk of contracting COVID-19? And the rates right now are continuing to escalate and climb higher. Here in Washington State, the restrictions have just been extended. So, having gone through what you went through, what would you like to share with our viewers today?
Of course, we would always say, wash our hands, keep ourselves like as clean as possible, hygienic wise, and to try to avoid large crowds and stuff like that. Like no matter how we do stuff like that, COVID is real. It will still come to you whether you're by yourself or you're with a crowd.
Mm.
It's all up on you because when I went out and I got it, it was basically because I was always going like exercising, hiking and stuff like that, but I went by myself. So basically you just gotta really be careful. It's just try to avoid everything that's going on around you. It doesn't really matter what it is, and I think the best thing is to do is just to stay home. and always to think of your family because you don't want to be selfish and somebody else will get affected.
Mm-hmm. In our very first episode of Kurry Talks, Dr. Samoa shared something that still rings very deep to my soul, and I'd like to share that with you and our viewers today. It's that our ability to keep our COVID rates down shows how much we love each other and are cared for others. So let's all continue to do our part. Chrystahl Fiso Carrington shared some very deep and personal experiences about when she contracted COVID-19. Now, the symptoms for many of us may look very different. And Chrystahl, I'd like to talk about what those symptoms were for you and help share that with folks. Maybe other people might be experiencing similar symptoms, and they can learn about when it might be time to go get tested.
Yeah, sure. Well, it all started, of course, we go by day 1, day 2 of your first symptom. For me, I'm a very, I was a very scary cat. If I get sick instantly, I will go to the emergency room. It doesn't matter if it's a headache, a toothache, or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm very that kind of, person. The first day I first noticed, I woke up in the morning and I went to go do my regular routine, but I felt so weak. But this was in the morning. So I went to go do my routine and stuff like that, and I keep coming down into the room and just keep laying down. And I was like, what's wrong with me? I don't know. Around 1 o'clock that same day, I felt like a little fever coming through. Then I was laying down and I was like, okay, why am I getting this fever?
Yeah.
I don't have this. And of course, the first thing that popped in my head, oh my gosh, I'm getting COVID or something like that.
Right.
So I was getting really scared. But it's just so luckily because that same day, my parents, they went to dialysis. So they weren't home at the time I was contracting all this. Around 4 o'clock that day, my whole body was hot. I was like, I gotta leave the house, because if I'm really feeling like this, and if my elderly parents contracted that, can you imagine how they would feel? It would probably be 10 times worse than how I felt. So I immediately went to the ER. When I got to the ER, instantly they took me inside. They did my fever. My fever was 102.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was 102, and I was like, oh my gosh, please don't give me no bad news. So they did all the tests and stuff like that, and they came back, and they told me I tested positive. Right there, at that very moment, I felt like my whole world shattered. And I was so upset with myself, because all your emotions are running through oh, am I going to die? Am I going to go through something? Am I going to be put away and not be able to help my parents? Kind of, all that kind of emotions. So the first thing they told me, well, you have to go home, get into quarantine immediately and to take ibuprofen. So that's what they were, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I should have just sat home. But good thing I went to go get tested because I was very, try to be aware of what's going on. And when I tested positive, I came home, packed my stuff, went to the hotel. Day 2 is that's when all my symptoms came in.
Wow.
My body was hot, my fever, slightly headache, I had a dry cough. That's why I was it was very a regular flu.
Worsening?
Yeah, it was getting worsening. So that's the same thing as day 3. Then day 4 rolled around, and then that's when I started getting better. I don't know, but a lot of people their symptoms last longer.
Yeah.
But for myself, it completely finished on a Tuesday. I was feeling a lot better. But then here's the catch: when I was in quarantine, every other day, then you'll be oh my gosh, I still feel a little lightheaded and stuff like that. So I was maybe it's still in me, I just gotta let go. Try to do something to make it go out. So I was okay, maybe I should just continue quarantine. So I just continued quarantining and stuff like that, and then it finally went away. I think for me, it was just throughout that weekend. It was just Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday then I got better. So that was like
Yeah.
5 days. But you just gotta keep in mind, it doesn't mean when it goes away, like you would, be able to go out there and do your regular stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta continue quarantining because, like, let's say today you feel better, the next day you'll feel weak. Like you'll go back
Yeah.
into thinking that. So you get lightheaded here and there. So it takes you a while
Mm-hmm.
to get back into yourself. So after that, then you'll be feeling a lot better after that. After your whole 2 weeks of quarantine,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
That's wonderful. So listening to our bodies, when we're feeling low energy and it's not, normal that we're
Mm-hmm.
at such low energy, heightened fever, main, risk factor or something to pay attention to, possible dry cough, right? All of those things. And it's great that you also mentioned making sure that we're quarantining for the entire 14-day period. Because there are asymptomatic, the nature of COVID-19 for some people is asymptomatic, meaning you may not show symptoms, or the severity of what the symptoms are that you might be going through may lessen or increase, right? So making sure that we are adhering to the full 14-day quarantine. And now the other thing I'm interested in learning about is, were you able to then go get tested again to ensure that you wouldn't still test positive?
It's funny that you brought up that subject because before I left Hawaii, I actually went and got tested.
Mm-hmm.
My results came back negative.
Okay.
So, I mean, of course, who isn't excited? But I went to go get tested at least 2-3 months after I got
Mm-hmm.
sick. So, because the doctor always advised, don't go get tested right away
Yes.
because it will still come back positive.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of waited out. So because if you don't want to go all the time and you're like, oh no, you're positive, because I believe it's still in you. So after 2 months to 3, that's when I went to go get tested, and then it came back negative. So, yeah.
Wonderful, and I'm glad you mentioned that. That would be a very interesting thing for our viewers to learn about and ask a doctor about, which will be the following segment at the end of our Kurry Talks. So, now Chrystahl, at this time, we have the opportunity to play a fun little game and give you the opportunity to win a gift basket full of items that includes hand sanitizer, PPE, face shields, all of these amazing stuff that'll help you to stay safe and those that you love at home throughout this holiday season.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Awesome.
All right. When we come back, we're going to play a short game with Chrystahl Fiso, and don't go anywhere because Ask a Doctor will be coming soon after all of that. Welcome back. So we are going to play a series of rapid fire questions with our special guest, Chrystahl Fiso Carrington, and she will have the opportunity to win a gift basket of PPE and lots of other essentials to help keep her and her family safe throughout this holiday season. Now, Chrystahl, are you ready to play?
I'm ready.
Now, the game will go like this. I will ask you a series of questions, and you'll have to respond as quick as you can within the next minute. If you answer a decent amount of questions, you'll get to win that very special prize.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, are you ready?
I think.
Okay. And 3, 2, 1. What store do you shop at the most?
Uh-oh.
What supply in your house is running low right now?
I don't know.
What is your least favorite beverage? What is your favorite beverage?
Water.
What is the first thing you notice about someone when you meet?
Their hair.
What compliment do you give most people?
You're beautiful.
Okay, thank you so much for playing, Chrystahl. You answered 2 out of 5 or 6. Unfortunately, you don't get to win, but you do get to go home. JK. Everybody's a winner in this game, and you get to take home this lovely bag from UTOPIA Seattle. And we just want to thank you again for being a part of our Kurry Talks episode 2. Don't go anywhere, everyone. We have Ask the Doctor coming up next.
Good evening and welcome to our second episode of Ask a Doctor and Kurry Talks. I hope you enjoyed that powerful message by Chrystahl and her sharing her story and in a very vulnerable stage, sharing with us folks that she was tested positive for COVID-19 and her experience, the fear that she went through of probably not seeing her family again, her parents again. But she came out triumph. She came out fighting. And she had a very, very powerful message for all of us, is to continue doing the right things around COVID-19, which is to continue wearing masks, continue social distancing. Vaccines are just around the corner. It's just landed in Washington State, but we still need to be doing the right thing. Tonight, we have our special guest for Ask a Doctor. We don't have one doctor, but we have two. We are blessed by two fabulous people who've joined us to answer all your questions and questions that you may have around COVID-19 vaccines. Please join with me to welcome Dr. Andrew Pati Ah Young, who is a Samoan research investigator at the biotechnology company, where he investigates the underlying cause of various diseases and uses this data to develop innovative and effective treatments. He was born and raised in the village of Faleniu in American Samoa. He credits his achievements to an upbringing on a small island that had so much to offer a young, curious mind. We are excited to have Dr. Andrew Pati Ah Young to join us for our second Ask a Doctor. And joining him is none other than Dr. Maxime Ah Young-Chapon, who is a Ph.D. Holder, a French immunologist. He earned his master's degree from the University of Paris, France, and he's a doctorate from the University of California, Los Angeles. For his work in investigating the host-pathogen relationship between Herpes Simplex Virus-1 and human innate immune system. Maxime currently lives in San Francisco in the Bay Area and works at biotechnology, and is also partner of Dr. Andrew. So without further much ado, I would like to welcome both you wonderful people to our second Ask a Doctor. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you, Diana. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting us.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. It's our pleasure, actually. Do you have some plans for the holiday? What are you doing?
we're gonna stay home and stop spreading COVID.
Well, that's a really really good. That's a really good plan. I think. Are you going to cook something? Are you going to be? Who cooks in the family?
He does. He does. So I have big hopes for Christmas dinner.
Does he cook Samoan food?
Of course he does. Not just Samoan food, but also Samoan food. Yeah.
And how about you? Do you cook some French, desserts or French patisserie?
Once in a while, I bake some desserts.
Oh, nice! I love French dessert and French man.
Does your partner cook for you?
Most of the time, yes.
See, it's funny. I'm the one who usually cooks in the family, but because he's French, people assume that he's the cook. You know?
Yeah, it's because they have such beautiful, food, and food is like an art. I think in France, it's the style of making food is just so, I think, beautiful. That's what our eyes are attracted to. Maybe that's why. So, without further ado, I would like to jump into some questions that we have received and some questions that we'll be receiving while we interact. With the recent development with the vaccines, FDA has just recently approved two vaccines, not just one, but two back to back. One is by Pfizer, and the other one is by Moderna. It has been, developed and ready for the process, ready to be executed in such a short time. What information would you like to give us about these two vaccines? Do you know anything that you would like to share with us about these two vaccines?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, the two mRNA-based vaccines have been submitted for emergency use authorization to the FDA. The Pfizer one was approved last week, and the Moderna should be approved in the next few days. And we've heard questions also from our families about how come the vaccine is ready so fast, right? Like, did people take the time to go and do the trials properly and make sure it's safe? So the application is actually publicly available to the FDA, and in it, the two companies that have produced these vaccines present clinical data from clinical trials where over 30,000 people have received the vaccine. And the FDA only reviewed those applications if half of the patients had received the vaccine, the full vaccine, which is the 2 doses, and a period of follow-up after the second dose to make sure that there wasn't any serious side effects. So out of that data, it appears that the vaccines are both safe and very effective, with a 95% reduction in the risk of contracting the infection. That means the risk of getting sick is reduced by 95%. And the side effects are fairly common for all of us who've gotten vaccines. Sometimes you don't get a lot of, it doesn't feel like much. You might have a little bit of soreness. And sometimes this seems to be on the stronger side of the side effects, where you will get muscle pain in the area of injection, and a third to half of the people who received vaccines also reported other types of side effects like headaches, chills, which go away in a couple of days. So nothing serious. Definitely not as serious as the disease itself. But also, I think some of the sort of the side effects from the injections, these are side effects that people also get when they get the flu vaccine, right? So these, I think, are sort of general side effects that you would get simply from the vaccination process. But I mean, the concerns are relevant. The fact that this has gone
in such a rapid pace. Like, normally it takes a couple of years for a vaccine to be approved, but it took less than a year, right? It took less than a year to get from sort of the basic research discovery side all the way to to now getting a shot ready. Like, people are already getting vaccinated. But I think something that we'd like to express is that the process itself has many layers, has many regulatory layers, and all of these layers so far, from what has been published, what has been shared in the media, they've all been sort of executed. Right. So there are many different regulatory bodies. There are many different bodies that these bodies are independent of each other. Mm-hmm. So one is not influenced, say, by by politics or by the sort of the companies themselves, right? So these, by passing through all of these bodies, this demonstrates that safety is of utmost importance to these vaccines, and the trials themselves are also fairly large trials, right? So for both vaccines, for both companies, they've enrolled at least 40,000 people for these trials, and the safety data looks great. So I wouldn't be personally. We would both sign up for the vaccine. My mom is living with me. I would take her to get the vaccine once it's available to us. That's my trust in the safety. That's our trust in the science. And there are a lot of smart people who care about the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine that are behind this.
Right. So you, Dr. Andrew, you mean to say that since the vaccine were ready in less than a year, which is an unprecedented time for vaccines in our history to be prepared, some folks actually worry that some crucial steps may have been missed. You say it's not. Can you reassure our folks, our folks from the Pacific Islands that none, from your point of view and your knowledge, that steps have not been crucial steps have not been missed?
So I think it's not that I don't think, based on what I've seen, what has been reported by the FDA and the CDC, it seems that the steps, the normal steps of getting a vaccine through clinical trials, getting that manufactured, all of these steps have been executed. I think what is important to know is that some of these steps were done in parallel, right? For example, the manufacturing began while the clinical trial was going. So whether the trial was going to be successful or not, we would still have the vaccine ready, right? So if it wasn't successful, all of that money that went into that vaccines, all of those vials would not be used, would be wasted. So I think it's as you said, this is unprecedented disease, it's unprecedented times, and it's the only way to ensure that we get a vaccine out as soon as possible, is to have these steps be done simultaneously, which normally would, you would do your clinical trial first, and then you'd be concerned about manufacturing, and then worry about distribution later, right? Like, we don't have that option with COVID-19.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and at the same time, I would like to encourage our folks who are watching this live right now to please submit your questions, any questions that you have in the comment section, and we'll try to get your questions answered. You mentioned earlier about allergic reactions to having some flu vaccination. When we go and get flu vaccination, some people have some mild reaction, some people have severe reaction. When I get flu vaccination, I don't remember having much reaction, but I know there are some people that do get flu vaccination and they get really severe reaction to it. is it advisable for those people who are very sensitive to vaccines, who have allergic reaction? Is it advisable for them to get this vaccine? What is your best advice for those people who are very, maybe sensitive to medication and vaccines in general?
So there have been a few reports. I think there have been 3 reports in the broad media about anaphylactic reactions, so very strong allergic reactions to the vaccine. The CDC has updated their recommendation, and they recommend that unless you have a specific allergic reaction to a component of the vaccine, you are free, to get the vaccine, and you shouldn't be at a higher risk than other people. I think now that the vaccine is being given to more and more people, we've entered what's called, sometimes called phase 4, pharmacovigilance. So all the adverse events that keep happening are giving us more information on who can and who cannot get the vaccine, and all of these are reported to the FDA as they happen. And if in the next few days or few weeks, it appears that some types of allergies are detrimental to getting the vaccine, then there will be an update. And definitely, when you go to the clinic, the doctor at the clinic, the nurse at the clinic, they know all of those things. So they can ask you if you have any type of allergies, if you've had allergies to medication before, if you've had allergies to vaccination before, and they'll know as well. And I saw, while Andrew was replying to a question, I saw a question from Eddie that I thought was relevant. And Eddie was asking, how is it that the phase 3 trials are supposed to be 1 to 4 years long, but we already have a vaccine? So the answer to that is that the length of a phase 3 clinical trial really depends on what the disease is and how fast the disease progresses. So if you're talking about a drug against, say, a cancer, because cancer is such a long-term disease, to be able to see a difference in the progression of, say, cancer patients, you might have to wait 6 months, 2 years, 5 years before you see any meaningful difference in the outcome for those patients. But in the case of COVID-19, it is such a fast infection, and also it has been so widespread that to get the sufficient amount of patients enrolled and have what we call the statistical significance, so the mathematics that prove that you have an effect, it takes a lot less time than it would for other diseases. So even though the phase 3 trials seem to have been very short, the sites have been able to enroll sufficient patients, and the difference between out of those patients, the difference between the group that received the vaccine and the group that received the placebo control, so they get an injection but there's no vaccine in it, was sufficient to show the efficacy of the vaccine.
Great. We have a community member all the way from Vancouver, BC. His name is Shanil K. Kumar, and he's originally from Fiji Islands. He's asking us, how many vaccine shots do we need to be immune for COVID? How many shots do we need to be completely immune?
So the 2 vaccines will be 2 shots. So most vaccines have 2 shots. The second is usually a booster shot, and it doesn't guarantee, lifelong immunity, right? So the measles vaccine, that so far has guaranteed lifelong immunity, but for COVID, there hasn't been enough. As we were talking earlier, the studies haven't taken long enough to demonstrate that, the vaccines can give us lasting protection. But the point of having this second shot is really just to reactivate the immune system such that you have your immune cells that will produce the antibodies. You have your memory cells that will also produce antibodies and help fight the infection. But whether or not this is going to protect us long term, it's too early to say that.
So for those who are thinking that, okay, I'm going to get my first COVID-19 vaccine shot, and after 2 weeks I have to go back and get my other one, and they get the first one and they think, oh, I think I'm immune now. I don't need to do my second one. What advice do you have for those people?
Get your second one. Yeah, I mean, there's no way for anyone to say that you're immune after one shot, right? I think what the data has shown is that you can already get an immune response. You can already get protection from a single shot. But it's essential to get the second shot for that stronger protection, and just to ensure that the first shot wasn't so successful in triggering a response.
Right. So when you look at the data that's been published, it appears that the first shot provides some protection already, but we don't have any information on how long that lasts. And so the risk that you take if you don't get the second shot is that, maybe a month or two from now, you're not going to be protected anymore. At this point, we just don't know. So it's important, if you've gotten the first shot, you've already invested your time, you should go back and your second shot, and then you'll be reassured that the protection will be as long as it can with this particular vaccine.
There we go. I hope Shanil Kumar is listening to that. You need to get both your shots in. Isao Tamur is asking us, should we get the vaccine even if we already contracted COVID-19?
That's a good one.
I think if you can, you should. We're discussing taking the vaccine. We're really at the point of getting access to the vaccine, and most of us don't have access to it. But if you do have access to it, I think you should, even if you've been infected, because what came out of the studies is that, especially for infection that haven't been highly symptomatic, the vaccines give better protection. And so that's measured by looking at the amount of antibodies, which are the molecules that block the virus from infecting you. And so people who have received the full regimen of the vaccine, so the 2 doses, have more of those antibodies in their blood than people who had asymptomatic infection. So even if you've been infected, get the vaccine if you can.
Yeah, I think just to add to that point, it's also a matter of, we have to understand what the vaccine is, right? So both Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, it's an mRNA vaccine, and it's mRNA that encodes for the spike protein. And this is a protein that's essential. It's required for the virus to enter and infect cells. So essentially what the vaccine does is you're producing antibodies specifically to this spike protein. So now our bodies produce all of these neutralizing antibodies that target the spike protein. So that's the protection there. Whereas if you were recently infected, there's no way to ensure that the antibodies that your body made in response to that initial infection are neutralizing antibodies. Are there antibodies that can block? The viral molecule, the virus is a complicated molecule, right? So your body can develop antibodies to different particles on the virus. But with the vaccine, it's catered to specifically making antibodies that target the spike protein. So ideally, if it was successful, well, it is proven to be 95% effective, then will make a lot of antibodies to specifically target the spike protein. So I would get it even if you were previously infected.
Thank you for that information. One of our community members, Marissa, is asking, from the trials that have been done, are there differences in side effects amongst different age group, elders compared to young adults and so forth?
There are, although to be entirely honest with you, I don't know if they're significantly different. And what I mean by that is whether we can mathematically determine that it wasn't just random differences. But from the side effects that I've seen reported, they tended to be less severe in the older group of people, which was determined as over 65 years old. And that the idea that people provide to explain that is that as we age, our immune system sort of becomes less responsive. And because those side effects are caused by the immune system reacting to the vaccine, younger people might have a stronger response. And so the side effects might be more intense than people who are older.
Yeah. And I think adding to that point, I think this is one of the perhaps surprising things about the results from at least the Pfizer study, because the data is now published, so we can share the publication with your group, and you can share that with the public. That the side effects, and that was always a concern when the trials were going on, is that this might have older people might have a slightly worse response to the vaccines, but that's not what the data showed. It actually showed very minimal differences between those older than 65 and those younger in terms of side effects.
Nice. We've just received one more question from Gregory Hogdell, who's just asked, some people have raised the risk of COVID-19 becoming a seasonal outbreak, requiring different vaccine every year due to constant mutations. They back up their claim by pointing that the SARS-CoV-2 virus had already 3 or more strains. But the current studies show that SARS-CoV-2 has a very low genetic variability, 400 times smaller than the influenza A. Is that a risk real if SARS-CoV-2 remains present in the population for the next couple of years?
That's an excellent question, and I think that's always a question that those who study viruses, right, like virologists, it's always a big concern, just because of the rate of mutations, and for example, the flu vaccine, you always have to get a new vaccine seasonally, right? And that's because the rate of mutation is quite high for the flu, and that doesn't seem. I don't want to misspeak, but I don't think there's enough data to say that the rate of mutations for SARS-CoV-2 is high. I do agree that there have been that 3, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 strains that have now been reported. 2 of the strains, I know for a fact that one is a particular mutation that actually enhances transmission, infection. The other 2, I'm not sure how virulent those strains are, but I don't think we have enough information to say that we would need to have a seasonal vaccine. But I feel like we would probably know that by now if the rate is high, but that I haven't seen that data published.
Thank you. The next question is by our beauty queen at UTOPIA Seattle. Her name is Tweety. She is, I think you have answered this question, but I'm just going to repeat it. she's saying, can we also discuss the components of the vaccine as well? What is the main ingredient within the vaccine that helps to combat COVID-19 effectively? I think Dr. Andrew touched a little bit on that earlier.
Right. So if we're talking about the approved vaccine and the one that we expect to be approved within the next week, they're both mRNA-based vaccines. What that means is that they carry the instructions for the cells to produce the spike protein, which is that protein that's on the virus. And that set of instruction to be delivered to our cells is packaged in lipids. So, if you will, think about a soap bubble, and then within that is the actual mRNA, which is the instructions for the protein. So then, when that goes into a cell, the cell will then start to produce the spike protein, which is the viral protein, which will then be recognized by the immune system. And at the same time, the RNA will activate the immune system to start the immune reaction and provide the protection.
Yeah. So the main ingredient is the mRNA. So the other components is this lipid layer that's used to keep the vaccine stable, but also it enhances because it's a lipid particle. So our cells have a lipid layer as well, and so that it stabilizes the RNA, but also it helps it with getting into the cells. So when it gets into the cells, it'll make specifically the spike protein, and then our body will make the drug. Right.
Thank you for explaining that so well and so simple. Even I could understand, and I don't come from a medical background. And I hope that answers Tweety's question, because I hope, Tweety, you're taking some notes, because tomorrow I will be asking you to explain to me the same way the doctors have. Tweety and I work together, and she is so much fun. The next question is by Valerie, and she is asking, do we need to vaccinate kids or only adults?
So I believe so far the trials only enrolled people 16 years old and older. So there isn't. I don't think there's data on children, but I'm expecting that eventually we'll get to them as well.
So for now, you say it's 16 years and older.
That's what has been tested in the clinic, yes. But as you know, it's actually set. There's a national guideline, and then it's actually set state by state. But there's sort of a priority list as to who get the vaccine, and children would be sort of at the bottom of that.
Bottom, okay.
Right. But I think if just to add to that point, if everyone, over the age 16 or older, if everyone gets vaccinated, in a way, it can protect those at risk, right? Like immunocompromised people, those who can take the vaccine. For example, if for some reason children cannot take the vaccine, if we get vaccinated, we prevent them from secondarily getting a disease just by simply herd immunity, just by preventing the spread of the virus.
Absolutely. So we have another question by Eddie, and Eddie's asking, Janssen Pharmaceuticals are releasing their version of a single dose and a double dose vaccine. What are the difference between the two? Wouldn't a single dose suffice? I didn't hear about this. Do you have any knowledge about this?
I didn't realize that they had two vaccines, to be honest. The single versus double dose is really based on experience. As Andrew was saying, the classical way of doing vaccines is to have multiple doses.
Mm-hmm.
Some vaccines are efficient with a single dose. But that comes, that knowledge comes later, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Janssen definitely has. So other companies are not basing it on the mRNA technology. They're basing it on older technology that they have already used for other vaccines. And based on that information, they might feel confident that a single dose will be sufficient. However, they still need to prove that in the clinic. So during the phase 3 trial, if they use a single dose, they will have to demonstrate that they're able to provide protection from infection, um, at a significant.
Now, speaking about on the same subject, would you know if Pfizer and Moderna both have double dosage, or is it one of them has single?
Both of them have 2-dose regimen.
2 doses. Okay. Right. So, recent reports suggest that 34% of adults in America are skeptical about vaccines. Out of this 34%, a majority of, the majority that makes this 34% of adults in America are people of color, Latinx, and Black and brown people. And they have, some PTSD when it comes to vaccines, and some because of the misinformation, the fear of them being a guinea pig, as being put forward to trial something that may work or may not work. They have this so much unwarranted fear, even in this day and age. What kind of advice would you have for people who are still very skeptical or still undecided about the vaccine?
Yeah, I think that's, as you pointed out, there's mistrust, just within, minority communities, people of color, just towards the healthcare system in general, right? And a lot of these communities have been, unfairly treated. A lot of them don't have the greatest access to healthcare. So that mistrust develops there, and I think, and that's also why it's important to have these conversations. And I guess our role here is to try to be transparent, to try to explain the vaccines, explain the trials, explain what the vaccine is about, and that it's for these recent approvals,
Mm-hmm.
The safety data is strong. So I wouldn't be too concerned about safety, but also the vaccine seems to be effective. So I think being transparent, so the CDC, the FDA, the companies that are involved, I think being transparent about that process can help calm a lot of the fears and the mistrust. But also, when it comes to distribution, right? Like these regulatory bodies will have guidelines, but I think they definitely need to involve sort of community workers, people who know the community,
Mm-hmm.
go through them to get to the community. Otherwise, if you bypass if you bypass them who already have the trusted community, then it's going to be very difficult to get people vaccinated. So I think transparency is key, but also getting community workers like you guys involved in the process, and hopefully getting other minorities who are scientists, clinicians. Um, me speaking about this, one of the reasons I accepted the invite was also because, there are a lot of Samoans, right? There are a lot of Samoans who are skeptical. And I have many friends and many family members who are skeptical about the vaccine. And so I hope that, hearing from me and me talking about the work that I do can they can relate to me. They can see that, okay, there are minorities who are also working on this. So please trust me or trust them to calm those fears and hopefully develop trust with getting vaccinated.
And on the same note, I want to reassure our viewers that I have been part of a lot of workshops and a lot of meetings where, when it came in regards to how vaccines will be distributed here in Washington State. They have involved stakeholders like us. We are a minority group, but they involved us in discussions and in meetings and things like that, which was really, really nice, because we were able to bring out our concerns, and they heard, and they wanted to hear. This is from the Department of Health, Washington Department of Health. So I feel that this time around there has been so much involvement, and there's been so much inclusivity, which is so nice, actually. And I think we are heading into the right direction when it comes to equity and inclusion. There is another question that just came in, and it's from, I apologize if I don't say your name right. It's, I think, Jania, and
she's a friend.
Is asking, what's the reason why someone would contract COVID more than once?
Well, this kind of circles back to the question about whether you should get the vaccine if you've already got the disease. Sometimes when you get the disease once, maybe you test positive by those PCR tests, which are extremely sensitive, but you don't have a very strong disease, and you don't make a strong immune response against the virus. That means that either you didn't produce enough of those antibodies that prevent the virus from entering your cells, or you made some, but the amount that you produced kind of went away really fast. And in that case, you become sensitive again to being infected. And that's why these vaccines are so much superior, is that, without having to get a very strong disease, you get a very strong protection against the infection by the virus.
But I think it also goes back to, I think, was it Greg that asked a question about mutations?
Yes.
So if, let's say you had COVID previously, and then maybe you would contract a different variant of the virus, right? So that could be another trigger for you to in getting the virus. But
there's I don't think has been reported yet. The virus, as we were sort of hinting before, it's not a highly mutative virus. The spike protein mutation that's been reported is a single difference.
Yeah.
So it's likely that the immunity you're going to mount is going to be what we call broad enough. What the breadth mean is that if this is the spike protein, you're going to have antibodies to this area and that area and that area. And so even if this area is mutated, you still have the antibodies to the other area to protect you. So far, I don't believe that there's been any report of a new strain being escaping the vaccine or anything like that.
That's actually wonderful news. And I know Dr. Andrew and Dr. Maxime, thank you so much for your time. I will just have one more last question, and then it's going to be a wrap. But on behalf of Utopia Seattle and our folks here in Washington, we want to say a very, very big thank you for you, both of you, taking out your precious time and helping us to understand better about COVID-19 and vaccination in general. And as we prepare to get ready to get vaccination in the next maybe weeks or months, this information that you're giving us is very timely, and it's also very, very helpful and for our folks. I think Tweety asked another question earlier, and I'm going to ask the question on the same subject. Is that with vaccination coming around the corner, and it's arriving, and in weeks or months we'll be getting it probably, and people have been taking measures to protect themselves from this pandemic for quite some time now. Does this mean, the vaccination coming in, vaccination is that we can avoid wearing masks in public, we can avoid social distancing now, we can have big gatherings, say next week, which is Christmas dinner and New Year's party and things like that. Dr. Andrew and Dr. Maxime, what is your take on this?
I wish we could say yes, but unfortunately, no, not just yet. It's going to take time to have enough people vaccinated that the number of cases go down, as was mentioned in the previous segment. The surge in cases is extremely bad right now. We're starting to see effects of people gathering for Thanksgiving at a time where we already had a lot of infections. The number of deaths is starting to pick up. So meeting in person right now is definitely dangerous, to be limited as much as possible. Now, regarding the vaccine, what has been tested is whether the recipient of the vaccine is protected from getting sick. What that means is, does the recipient develop symptoms or not? What it does not mean is, can the recipient be infected? And so we still need to get that full set of data to know whether, as vaccinated, you're unable to spread the disease. Because there's a possibility that you might still get the virus and you won't get sick, but you might still spread the virus. It's not, it's not a high possibility, but it hasn't been ruled out yet. So while we get that information, we have to continue wearing our masks in public, washing our hands regularly, and social distancing as much as possible. And if people are going to be meeting over holidays, maybe they can try to meet with a smaller group of people. Maybe they can try to meet outside, anything to mitigate the risk. And again, the high risk is when everybody's sharing the same air. So when you don't have a mask and we're in a closed space. So if you can limit that time, then that would be better. Of course, the best is to take a hit for this year and have a really, really big party in the summer.
Absolutely. If we all stay safe and just wait, we can have 10 Christmas parties next year. All July till December. We can have Christmas party every month.
Yeah, I think, I just want to add, I think Maxime answered it. But I just want to add that we should definitely learn from Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
There was that lapse in judgment, and people got together, they celebrated, and that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing a surge in cases, and it's actually directly linked to Thanksgiving. And I think the the issue is that not enough people will be vaccinated heading towards Christmas, right? So a lot of us will still not get the vaccine. So as Maxime mentioned, I would still be patient. We've heard that many times, but if you want to see your loved ones for next Christmas, then you definitely should take precautions for this Christmas.
Thank you, Dr. Andrew and Dr. Maxine. And I think Dr. Maxine actually brought out a really, really important point, which was that even if I'm vaccinated and if I have got vaccine, I could still, it will protect me from getting sick, but I may get COVID-19 and I may still be able to spread it to other people. And that is the key why we should wear masks, why we should still social distance, why we should still wash our hands as we have been washing for the past year, so extensively. It's so important. Even if I get vaccinated, I could still be, I may be protected, but I may get COVID-19 and I may be passing it to other people who may not be vaccinated. So for their safety, for their love, I should be wearing mask. And that is the key thing, I think, that, we learned tonight as we prepare for our holidays. Well, I hope you guys are going to have some nice dinner and some nice food for Christmas and New Year's.
We'll have pea soup. In fact, my mom is actually making pea soup right now. So
oh, wow. Andrew, isn't it always nice to have mom around so you can have nice food?
Especially after a long day of work. So.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, and we hope to see you both again in the next year.
Yeah, let us know. Thank you for having us, and thank you for the platform to to share with our community and to hopefully explain the process, allay some fears, and just calm everyone down. Everything will be okay. So let's just make it through Christmas.
The privilege and honor is both ours, and we are so glad that you were able to join. We'll see you in the next year. And thank you, folks, for watching us tonight on Ask a Doctor. We hope that you will stay safe, you'll stay vigilant, you'll stay distant from people that you do not know, and also social distance, wear mask, and wash your hands, be safe. 2020 has taught us a lot of things. One of the things is to, life has no guarantee. We don't know what holds for us tomorrow. Take this moment to, take account of your loved ones and think about them, think about their safety, and think about other people who have lost so many family members. Think about those families who are not going to have their parent, their mother, their dad, or their daughter, or their husband at the dinner table this Christmas. For them, please wear mask, please social distance, and please take care of the other person or another, your neighbor or your friend, because it's really, really important that we do take care of each other in this time. Vaccines are around the corner, and we hope that soon everybody will be vaccinated, but until then, let's continue to be careful. Thank you very much to everybody. Happy holidays, and we will be back in 2021. Signing off for all of us and wishing everybody a very, very nice and warm evening. Thank you.
You too. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Paono